Hello everybody and welcome to another Inventor tutorial. In this tutorial we will not be going over any new commands or controls, but we will be going more in depth with the ones that we have just learned, and we will be making a much more complex structure. As you can see in front, this here is the final assembly that we'll be making. It is 4 parts, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they are interlocked so that when I move this handle, the pin slides through this hole. Another view. So, to start off, we're going to start off with this part right here. So we'll create a new part file, and just to give you guys an idea, the part that we were creating looks like this. It is an L shape with 2 holes cut all the way through. So we are going to start off with our new sketch. Now, in the previous tutorial, we started using the XZ plane. Today, because all the parts are upright, we're going to start with the YZ plane. So we're going to use the line tool because the L shape is much more complex than the rectangle. So we have 2 outer dimensions of 1.5 for the vertical and 1 inch for the horizontal. And when making a vertical line with the line tool, you click the first point to create the first point on the line, and then you can see that you can put the second point anywhere, and that will give you a line between those 2 points. So in order to get a perfect vertical, we're just going to move it so that it looks like it's vertical, and then you'll see that it will lock to 180 degrees, and we know that it is now vertical, so we are going to push 1.5, and now we need a horizontal line of 1 inch, so go over until it locks to 90 degrees, and then type 1 inch, and now the smaller dimension for the thickness, you could say, will be 1/4 of an inch, and then that's the same for both, so we're going to come in now 1 inch minus 1/4 of an inch, which is 0.75, and then we're going to bring this up, and we don't have to type in a dimension because it will lock automatically to the height of this other line, and it's also at 90 degrees. Come over, and then we can just come over, and when it's green, that little point there is now green. That means that it has locked both together, so we can just click and it has completely finished the shape. Now we do need those 2 holes, one in the base here for mounting it to the grounded bracket, and one over here at the edge for attachment to the link. Both of them are 1/8 inch in diameter, and both of them are centered 1/8 of an inch from the closest lines. So for the one that attaches to the bracket, this is actually very simple. We have these lines, the dotted lines that appear when it locks to a center, and because the thickness is 1/4 of an inch for both of these dimensions, we can take that midpoint to be 1/2 from here and 1/2 from here, so we can just click right there once we get both to show up. We can type in our 1/8, and now we don't have to do any extra dimensioning. It has already locked it in place. So then we're going to come over and place the second one, so around in the basically the right spot, 1/8. Now we do want to dimension this just to make sure. Center point, outside line, and 1/8. And we can finish that sketch, and we're going to extrude this to be 1/4 of an inch thick. So extrude, select the shape, and 1/4 of an inch. And that's our first part, so we're going to save it, and I will create a new folder. And I'm going to title this part 1.6, just because it's in the widget 6 since the first part. And now we are going to create the second part, which will be this link that goes between. And you can see that here it is 2 bars with little columns in between. One attaches to that handle and the other one attaches to the cylinder. So this is a more complex shape. It will require going back multiple times to create new sketches. As you can see over in the corner, I actually have 3 separate sketch and extrusion segments. So we're going to go and we're going to create a new part. And let's see, so start new sketch, again use the YZ plane. We can use the rectangle for this. So select rectangle, and we're going to make this 1/4 inch by 1.5 inches. So 1/4, tab 1.5, and hit enter. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to put 2 holes in because we need them to come out of the shape rather than be turned into holes going through the shape. So now we're going to take the thickness, which is 1/8, and now we need to create the pegs, the cylinders. So we're going to create a new sketch on top of this. We're going to use this as the interior of that bar, and I'm going to project geometry just so I can get dimensions to those outer lines. I'm going to select the circle again, get that midpoint 1/8 and 1/8. Then we're going to use the dimension again. Again 1/8. And one more time 1/8. Then we can finish sketch, and we're going to extrude that. And now we need to extrude these to 1/4 inch just so that they can go all the way through the handle that we created. So that's good. And now we need to create the second bar on the other side. So we're going to select the faces of these cylinders. Only one needs to be selected because we want the other bar to be in this area and flush against both of those. So we're going to select one, we're going to hit new sketch, and now we don't have to create a rectangle. We can actually use project geometry. So we're going to go over and project geometry to the outside because the outside is a full rectangle. You can see if we were to do the inside, it would have these holes, the circles on it, and then once we extruded it, we would have holes in our shape. We don't want that, so we need to use the outside. Now we can just hit finish sketch, and we can extrude that. So nice and easy. Then we're going to save this, and I'm going to save it as part 2.6. And now we need to create this pin. And this pin, you can see, has a head with a hole so we can attach it to the link, and then it's the long cylinder that comes out that slides in and out. So this is going to be created in 2 steps. We're going to have the cube at the end with a hole through it as one, then we're going to put a cylinder off the side. So again, new part, and we're going to create this still in the YZ as opposed to coming straight off the XY. So we're going to go into the YZ, and we're going to create a rectangle that is 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. And then we're going to place a hole in the direct center, again using these midpoint lines that come up. And this hole is going to be 1/8. And that's all we need for that. We can extrude that then another 1/4 inch, just so it fills up all the space of that middle link. And now we're coming off the side with this pin, so going to select the side by right-clicking new sketch, and then we're going to use project geometry so that we can use those lines and line it up. And this time we're going all the way to the edge, so we can just move over to the edge until it locks to 1/4 of an inch. And okay, finish sketch. Then we're going to extrude this to 5 inches, just so it will extend past the shape no matter what. I'm going to save this again. And that was the easy pieces. Now we have to create this base, which, as you can see, has a hole going one way. It has a cutout in here. If you look at this, there's a pin going through that cutout as well, and then we have the flat base. So this will also require multiple steps, as you can see in the corner. This will be the most yet, 4 steps. So we're going to create one last new part. And we're going to again put this on the YZ plane. And we are going to start with base, which will be 4 inches as a horizontal line. And then let's zoom so we can see it. And then for that cube, the flat part of the base is 1/8 of an inch in height, and then the cube that the cylinder goes through sticks up another 1/2 inch, so we can add that together to get 0.625. And now to finish off the horizontal of this cube, we need to go 1/2 an inch in, so 0.5, excuse me. And then we need to go down another 1/2 inch, so 0.5. Now I'm going to jump over here. Now what I just did was right click, and that brings up the pie chart. And then from there I just clicked on the line tool a second time, and it brought me out of what I was doing and right back into the tool. So it's just a way of switching sides without having to click off, escape, and come back into the tool. Anyway, so I'm going to go over to the other edge, and I'm now going to go up to the same height, and I'm going to come in 1/4 of an inch, make sure that's horizontal, coming in 1/4 of an inch for the mounting for the handle. Then we're going to come down into that locks, and we're going to bring this across. Now we have our basic shape for the base, and we can extrude this entire thing to 1/2 an inch and click OK. Now we need to put a hole through from this face to the face on the other side, and we need that hole to be 1/4 of an inch so that the pin can slide through it, and we want it to be centered on this face here. So this face is 1/2 an inch by 1/2 an inch, and we want it to be the center of the circle to be in the direct center of that. So we could easily go over and use this face for a new sketch, except that this face is 1/2 inch by 0.625, which means that we can't use the center line of the vertical line in order to line it up in the center. So I'm going to come back over, and I'm just going to use this face here, which is the 1/2 by 1/2. So I'm going to new sketch on that, and we're going to project geometry so that we can use the lines and line up this circle with the center. Make sure you get both. And then we're going to come up, and we need this to be 1/4 of an inch. Enter, finish sketch. We can extrude this hole the other way so that it cuts through, and 1/2 an inch is the distance all the way through. We can check, and it went all the way through, so that's great. Now we need to create a cutout into this vertical piece here so that the handle can slip inside it like it does there. So in order to do that, we're going to go and we're going to get our shape on the top, and we're just going to cut straight down to remove material. So I'm going to use project geometry so that I can see now what the total shape is. And we need a 1/4 of an inch in the exact center to be taken out. So that's 1/8 of an inch from each side, and then the 1/4 of the inch in the center. So in order to do this, I'm going to measure from one side 1/8 of an inch. And now I could then go down and put a line down here, and then I could go from the other side another 1/8 of an inch and come down. But instead, I'm just going to use the rectangle tool because we'll be extruding a rectangle in the end anyway, so we might as well just go 2 points. And then the vertical for us is locked to 1/4 of an inch because it's locked to this bottom line. And then the horizontal, we're going to make another 1/4 of an inch. Hit enter. Now we can finish that and then extrude this down 1/2 an inch, which gets it to the bottom plane. As you can see, it is connected all the way across. And now we need to make the peg here so that we can put the handle in and get all the rotational parts. So I am going to start that from the inside center here. New sketch. And I'm going to angle it so I can see it and project geometry of that side. And then we want this circle to be in the center of this rectangle as well. So line up, we have both dotted lines, that's great. And then we're going to go with 1/8 of an inch. And hit OK. And finish sketch. And then we can extrude this across. We don't want 0.5, we want 0.25 for an inch. And then save this. And now we have our final part. So now we need to create our assembly. So we're going to go New, Assembly, and we're going to place our parts. We need to get back to widget 6. So first part, and second part, third part, and fourth part. Now we are going to want the base to be the grounded part. We're going to have that stay grounded. All the other stuff is going to move on it or through it. So just select it and right click and grounded. And now we can't move it, so that's good. And now comes the fun part of constraining so that everything works. And this is where the order normally doesn't matter because everything is constrained no matter what. And the order that I'm going to do the constraining in is what I feel is the easiest so that I don't have to rotate the camera. I want to minimize the times that I have to rotate the camera, that I have to move around the screen. I want everything to work as perfectly as possible, of course. So I'm going to start with the face on the inside here and on the back of this shape because it's in the orientation that we want it. So instead of moving the camera around the shape, I'm going to hover over where I think the backside is approximately and just wait a little bit, and then you can see we have a drop down menu that pops up. I'm going to go over until I get face normal, and as you can see, the face on the other side highlights. That's good, so I can select that. Now I have that selected as the first side. I'm going to click here as the second side. You can hit apply so that it doesn't get rid of the tool. Then center line, do center line and apply. And now we want the link to be attached to the bar. So I'm going to select one side of the link and mate it to the other side of the link. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to select this center line, and I'm going to go across until I find the other center line on the handle. I'm going to mate those, hit apply, and now we want the pin to be going so that the head is attached to the link and the pin part goes through that center line there. Now, if we were to constrain this center line to this center line, we could then constrain this center line to this center line, and it should lock it in place. The only problem is that because of its orientation, if we were to do that, it would stay in the orientation in which it is now, and it would not end up looking like this with the pin going that direction. So instead, what we would have to do is get those center lines and then hit OK so that we can move out, and then just move it until it gets to a little over the vertical point so that it recognizes that this is basically the orientation which it's going to want to be. And now when we go back in and constrain this center line, that center line, everything locks in place. We can hit OK, and now we can test it out. As you can see, it moves in and out. When we move the handle, we can get that motion by moving any of the pieces except the bottom. So congratulations, you have just created another widget. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you continue to love Inventor. See you in the next video.